Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw. Played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers, Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. But first, Tom, it's people are acting as if it's going to be a winter Armageddon here. There's no food left on the store shelves, or at least limited amount. I was there this morning at 7 a.m. and it was interesting. We probably had 20 people lined up ready to go to the store about 7 a.m. this morning. They're getting their last second provisions. And I went in and I couldn't even find, my wife wanted plain kind of non-yogurt yogurt, not made with milk, but made with coconut milk or something of that nature. And even that staple, if we can call it that, was in limited supply. I couldn't get her plain yogurt. I had to get her vanilla yogurt. And then there were some other items as well, but there was hardly any meat left. And, people, it's really interesting how people react. Because they're saying that this could go on a couple of days. And so nobody knows whether we'll get out.
We act like that in the past with storms, snowstorms. I don't recall that with snowstorms that we.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it is. I mean, it's always sort of been that way. Right. I remember we had, it was called the Great Blizzard of 78. Maybe you went through that too.
I'd be at Marquette at that time, yeah.
It was a college, and it was a really big deal because what I remember about it is, I had to write about it in addition to being part of it, living in it. And what I remember most is the lead was something about there was no beer left in Ypsilanti stores, because it was just every party store was.
That's terrible. That's really bad.
And it was about a 48-hour party for people, that blizzard. So,
I've never been up in Marquette, Michigan. So people don't know that's right on the southern shores of Lake Superior up in the upper peninsula of Michigan. Man, the thing there, though, is they were so used to the snow. I mean, they could get 2 feet of snow and it was no big deal. The plows are out, the sidewalks are cleared off, the roads are clear. Let's go.
Yeah, it is. When you live in that environment all the time, we're so used to having salt trucks, but like when you live in an area where they don't have a lot of snow, when I was living in right outside Washington, D.C., I remember as soon as there would be even like a hint of snow, first of all, nobody could drive in it.
Right.
And it was total chaos. Like the minute there was 2 snow flurries, the schools would be closed and how you grew up. It took really something big for you to close school.
I don't ever remember missing school. Yeah.
So, basically put your boots on and trudge to school, do what you got to do to get in there. So it'll be interesting to see how much we get. They've sort of downgraded a little bit. Before they were talking in terms of feet, like either 1 or 2 feet of snow. And now they're talking about somewhere between 7 inches and a foot, which is, we could do that standing on our head like these.
No problem at all.
Yeah, for sure. So
hey, I know we want to talk hockey, but just real quick, have you followed this Flores, the guy that was coaching in Miami?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, he was a hot candidate. He had a winning record with Miami. Got fired despite that, and now he claims he's suing the National Football League and the teams because they're not following the rules of non-discrimination. They have the Rooney Rule. Is that what it is for coaches getting hired?
Yeah. Well, you're supposed to interview a certain number of minority candidates.
Right. And the claims he made, like Bill Belichick sent him a text by mistake. Apparently with the New York Giants. Who is that back there? Who's that?
Yeah, that's one of my grandkids, Hudson and her brother.
Sounds like Larry Melnick when he's out of Pass Blue Ribbon.
Yeah, it's my 2-year-old granddaughter Hudson and her 3-year-old brother.
Oh, okay.
They go to the mattress quite often. They if we can use that term, there's constant. They're inseparable and buddies until somebody says mine.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So with Flores, then he claims. So, for instance, when he came in here with the Giants, Bill Belichick had sent him a text by mistake saying that they'd already hired the coach that they ultimately hired. I can't remember his first name right now. And then Flores was coming in for an interview after the fact. So it was kind of like a sham interview. It was almost like, okay, we need to fill the quota, so to speak, of interviews for minorities. But here's my take on it. And correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm running a business and I made an offer to somebody for a future employee. That offer they haven't accepted the offer yet. They may want to negotiate. They may be going other places. It's not inappropriate to continue to interview potential employees, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you make a good case, certainly. Although just in terms of technicality, I would say that's true because, you got to cover your bases. Right. On the other hand, I think you should make an effort to try to give, a real shot to people you're bringing in to hire, especially when it's to fulfill sort of a requirement. And, that's in there because for so many years, we've had a predominance of black players for a very long time, and we haven't had many black coaches. And if this is what it takes for them to look harder, I mean, that's, it's hard to argue that isn't discrimination. If all of your players are black and you have so many black athletes who are coming out and that's where most of our coaches come from, are from ex-players. So why don't we have more black coaches? I mean, I certainly get it. I mean, people always want to say, well, they should hire the best person. Well, in theory, you're absolutely right. But what about, when you have this level of discrimination? So,
and I listen to Boomer Esiason all the time. We're friends. He's a big Ranger fan. I listen to him in the morning, and he always talks about how it's an old boys club, right? So it's predominantly run by white people. So,
Yeah, and probably discrimination even goes beyond, racial issues. I'm sure there is some discrimination too against, or not so much, but when it's good old boys about, you're hiring a bunch of people who are friends of friends and, that sort of thing. So
the gender issue, the perception that a woman can't be a referee or run a team or all those things.
Yeah. Do you think, in football, I think that's, I'm sure there are people who still think that's, not to their liking, but we've had them now, for, I don't want to say a long time, but we've had them now, and I don't even give a second thought to it now.
I agree totally. Yeah, you see a woman out there refereeing a game, she's doing her job. And
so, and, and in hockey, we've, moved into the modern ages. We just saw the hiring of assistant general manager in Vancouver. I think she's the second. I believe the Ducks had one years ago as well. But
first woman on the bench with the LA Kings. The trainer was on the bench.
No.
Hey, I had a fun night last night. We were down at Madison Square Garden, and they were celebrating the start of Black History Month. And my old teammate Tony McKegney was there at the game. We sat together, told some old stories. He's a fun guy. Good boy.
Yeah, for sure. Did you go to Henrik's?
No, I did not. I watched it at home.
Yeah. No, didn't you? It was unusual. We've talked so much about how much I really admire Henrik, and I love talking to him. Smart guy and a very caring person. But the one thing that I was struck by, and I meant to talk about this the other day, was he sort of got into his personality a little bit. Like he sort of said, that I sort of my poor wife. I'd come home and I thought, like, wow, it almost bordered on too much information.
It's interesting you say that. I've had a few people come up to me and say, not in a critical way, they loved it. They thought how do you think? But typically at a ceremony like that, the person that's getting his number retired doesn't talk about himself as much as he'd have other people come in and talk about him.
Right.
And that was different, which is fine.
It was.
We've got Eric Edelson here is going to join us. I hope I said his name correctly. Eric, how are you?
Gentlemen, good morning. How are you?
Okay.
We're great, Eric. We appreciate you joining us here. We'll get started. Of course, Eric is the insider for Lightning Insider, right? Is that right? Do I get it right?
LightningInsider.com, yep.
Eric, I need to make a complaint right off the bat here. Like, I was waiting for the blue microphone that we had last time.
I had to change. I have
a
real microphone now.
All right. Okay. All right. I was all excited waiting for that microphone.
But Eric's covered the team a long time, and really, it's not happening if Eric doesn't know about it. So we're happy to have him on, and I want to just sort of get into it. I've talked about all season of the fact that Intellectually, because I've covered the league so long, I know how difficult it is, to repeat. So, the thought of winning 3 in a row is so hard to cross that bridge, especially given that, in the off season, they lost some players and everything else. But I've watched that team all season long, Eric, and I just believe they've got as good a chance to win as anybody else. Like, they're such a good team still. With all that. But what's your take on how they've performed this week and the chances of winning 3 in a row?
Well, entering the season, the first thing we thought was, how are you going to replace your third line? I mean, Yanni Gourde, Blake Coleman, and Barclay Goodrow were so good. They were such a vital piece of the team. You look at their 5-on-5 minutes, especially in the playoffs, and the role that they played, and the shutdown role and the closeout role, and you thought, how are you going to replace them? You bring in Corey Perry, a good veteran addition. He's not like those guys. And so you were wondering, what are they going to do? Well, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare has come in and played as well as you would expect for a player of his caliber, and he's been a fantastic penalty killer and a really good fit on the third line. Again, he's not those guys, but he really performs that role well. But it's been the play of the quote-unquote kid line, a name that Ross Colton does not like, but Ross Colton is centering that line with Boris Kachuk and Taylor Radish, a couple of rookies that, they've been really, really good at times. And it's almost as if they've used their third and fourth line to replace their third line, if that makes any sense whatsoever, to the point where John Cooper can trust that line really against just about anybody. And that's been a vital, revitalized them a little bit. And then you throw in the injuries that they've had. Nikita Kucherov missed 32 games. Braden Point missed 14 games. On the back end, both Eric Chernak and Zach Bogosian have missed more games than they've played this year. You factor all that in, and then you sit and you look at where they're at in the standings. You're like, okay, yeah, I guess they figured out a way to kind of replace the players they lost, and at the same time just gone out and played. And I think that's the thing about this team. I go back to this quote that Julian Breezeball gave right before the 2020 playoff bubbles, where he said, "Embrace the suck and dance in the rain." Which basically just means control what you can control. Don't worry about anything else. And the team has really embraced that. And, to sit here at the All-Star break and talk about them amongst the top point teams in the league, amongst the top point percentage teams in the league, considering all the injuries and everything they've had to replace going from the offseason, it's really impressive that they're sitting where they're at.
The one thing I think they've got over a lot of teams is they like to call it nowadays, they play the 200-foot game, right? They're good defensively, got great goaltending, goal scorers. I was in Rangers last night, played Florida, and Florida was unbelievable offensively. They were like an all-star team, like some of the stuff they were doing was incredible. Shesterkin played fantastic in that. But the problem with them is they can't keep can't keep it out, but they give up a lot of defensive mistakes too. So, I mean, that's one team that I thought was maybe going to give Tampa a hard time, and they still could. But again, I think the advantage that Tampa's got is they play that 200-foot game. Don't you agree?
I agree. And, I look at the Florida Panthers and I see the 2019 Lightning, a team that could just score goals at will, it seemed at times. I mean, they put up offensive numbers we haven't seen in a long time, and the Panthers are kind of doing the same thing. But then you have to ask yourself, can that high-risk, high-reward style portray to the playoffs? It didn't for Tampa Bay, and I'm not saying the Panthers can't do it. They're probably the deepest forward core in the league. I think you have some questions about their overall depth on defense, and there might be some goaltending question marks whether Sergei Bobrovsky is going to be Vezina Sergei Bobrovsky or if he's going to be first-year Florida Sergei Bobrovsky. But yeah, they can score at will. They will stretch you out, and they have the skill to make you pay when they catch you, and that's where the high reward comes from, right? But yeah, I mean, Florida's a really good team, but Tampa Bay has the experience now. And I had a conversation with a league exec a few weeks back, and he was mentioning how with the Olympics not a part of the plan anymore, that Tampa Bay benefits from that. You think of the number of players that they would have had going to the Olympics. It was 10, possibly 11 players that they could have had taking part in Beijing, plus John Cooper, who was supposed to coach Canada. Now they've got 5 games in the month of February. And they're going to get some rest that they would not have gotten otherwise. So he thought he kind of thought like Kevin, it's hard. It's hard to win 2. There's no way anybody's going to win 3. Now he thinks they might be the favorite now.
Yeah, they've really been impressive this season. And as you pointed out, to having in addition to losing the players they did in the offseason and then having the injuries, it's really remarkable. Like, despite the loss of Kucherov and Braden Point, they're still 7th ranked in terms of goal scoring per game. But what I have noticed is their defensive goals against average has slipped. They've fallen actually out of the top 10 in the league. What does that reflect? Why have they sort of been giving up more goals than we've seen in the past?
Well, giving up 9 to Florida, as they did coming out of the Christmas break, kind of adds a little bit to that number. That's never gonna help you. But I think the biggest part is the injury they've had on defense. Like I mentioned with Chernak and Bogosian, they've each missed more games than they played this year. It's really hurt their penalty kill. Their penalty kill for a while dipped big time. They were a top 5 PK team, and then they went through a stretch of about 4 weeks where they just seem like they're giving up a penalty power play goal every night. So that adds to the overall numbers. And I mean, let's face it too, this is a team that, knows what it takes to win in the playoffs right now. So is the focus going to be at 100% every night? It's probably not. And they've had a few games this year where they've actually gotten away with it, where, when you've got Andrei Vasilevsky, he can save your bacon many, many times. And he's done that a couple of times this year. But I think the PK has slipped. I think that adds to the numbers. But, when you're playing, and this is no offense to either player, but when Freddie Claesson and Andre Schuster are basically part of your regular rotation, that, their depth isn't as good as it has been on the back end this year. And I think that the injuries have reflected that. I mean, you look at some of the ice times that, the defensemen are having to get this year. I mean, Victor Hedman played 29 minutes last night. Mikhail Sergachev played 29 minutes the other night. So they're really having to rely on their top 3 or 4 D right now to take on some heavy minutes. And, it exposes your depth a little bit.
So you get to see Vasilevsky play all the time, and I'm here getting to watch Shesterkin play all the time. Is Shesterkin there yet? Do you think he's as good as Vasilevsky?
Wow, that's so hard to compare, because I think when we get done talking about it, we're going to talk about Andrei Vasilevsky as one of the best to ever play the game.
Yeah, I agree.
He's just so consistent, and you look at his performances in the playoffs. I think Shesterkin is on that path, on that potential path, at least to maybe be in that shadow a little bit. But boy, trying to compare Vasilevsky to anybody is a difficult thing right now because of the consistency level that he gives to this team on a nightly basis. And the thing is he used to have a lot of those wow saves. Bobby the Chief Taylor likes to use that phrase a lot, wow saves. He doesn't have to make a lot of wow saves anymore. And I think a big part of this is because he's become so much more mature as a goalie that there's not a lot of wasted movements in his game. He's just positionally and technically so sound that he's capable of making those saves, but he doesn't put themselves in the position to overtax himself to make it happen. So he has been a treat to watch, though, I tell you what, and he's not even 30 years old yet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point.
Eric, I've seen Julien Brisebois quoted as saying it's not real likely he'll be able to do much at the trade deadline. But when I talked to other general managers, they kind of scoff at that a little bit. And they said, he's got the best left side defense in the game. He really needs a right shot defenseman. And, he's going to call his friend Steve Yzerman and ask him to be the third man in on a deal. And, even a guy like Sherratt or another defenseman that's in the $3 or $4 million range. Well, if you can get Yzerman to take half and everything, you can get it down almost to where you're just switching one player for the next, really, for a kind of $1 million+ salary. So saying all that, what's your best guess? Are they going to do anything, or are they going to be able to get a defenseman to play on that right side to give them a little more depth there?
Yeah, that scenario you just brought up, it sounds familiar. Oh, that's right. He did it last year. Exactly at the same time when he said he couldn't do anything, that the salary cap hamstrung him. And look, it took some creativity, right? They got David Savard from Columbus, and Steve Yzerman did come in as a guy who ate half the remaining part of Savard's contract and made that work because they really needed the right-hand shot last year. They really found that out when Eric Chernak missed some games in the middle of last season. I think defensive depth is another area that they probably need to look at this year. I just mentioned that, with Claesson and Schuster. I'm interested, though, with the right side because we haven't seen them fully healthy yet. Jan Ruda has played the most games of anybody on the right-hand side. Chernak and Bogosian have been hurt. Cal Foote has come along. So they actually have 4 NHL defensemen on the right side, but we don't know how they can play because we just haven't seen it together this year. Of course, the clock is ticking with the trade deadline just over a month away now. But I knowing Julian, I think he's playing a little. Look, they have zero cap space. There's no doubt about that. They had to play a game in LA with 4 defensemen because they had no cap space to be able to make a call up due to injury. So that is actually true. They have zip when it comes to salary cap, but that doesn't mean you can't make it work. It just has to be dollar in, dollar out. And under that scenario, whether it's a Ben Sherratt or if it's another defenseman or even a depth forward, I mean, how comfortable would you be as Julian Breezeball with 2 rookies on your 4th line trying to go for a three-peat? So I think there are areas that he'd like to address, but he's definitely going to have to get very, very creative to get it done.
So the one team that I look at, looking at the standings there, that I think can take a run with Tampa is Carolina. How was Tampa matched up with them this year?
Oh, wow. They played early in the year. Boy, I can't remember off the top of my head, but, I remember the playoff series last year. It was 5 games, but it wasn't a 5-game series. Yeah. I mean, I think 3 of the games finished 2-1. And that's where Tampa Bay's maturity in that series came to play, because they were okay playing a tight, checking, low-scoring game and just waiting for their opportunities. And, that's where this team has learned this year. And that can be tough against Carolina with the way they like to play fast, or like the way they play in your face. It is a very difficult matchup for any team that's going to have to face them. And, look, Carolina made a lot of changes over the summer. They've worked out very well. I had questions about whether Freddie Anderson was a step up or a step sideways. I think he's proven that it was a step up in the goaltending department for them. Carolina, I think, is probably the best team at least on paper in the Metro Division. And they are going to be a very difficult team to get out. Of course, with the divisions back to normal, assuming things stay the way the standings are, that there wouldn't be a potential for that matchup until the conference finals. But that would be a lot of fun, though.
Yeah, yes.
Let me ask you one more question about the trade deadline, because this is part of what I'd asked before. But, it feels to me like the Lightning are playing with house money. They've already won 2, and now they got a chance to win 3. And so I think if it were me, I'd want to push all in. Like, I would give up more than I normally would in order to make a run at it, because they've already won twice. Might as well try to go for 3. But do they feel that way? Do they think we'll give up a little bit more to go for this the third, or now are they starting to think, okay, we've already won twice, let's keep our draft picks a little bit, because this is not going to go on forever. These guys are going to get older. What's their perspective on that?
Well, Julian has said it more than a few times that, sort of like what Jim Rutherford used to say in Pittsburgh, as long as I have this core and they have a chance to win Stanley Cups, I owe it to those players to do whatever I can that's in my ability to help them win cups. So there's no way that they're going to be just satisfied with winning 2. Of course, it's a great accomplishment. I'm not trying to downplay it at all. What they've done is incredible, especially under the circumstances the past 2 years. And here they are in position to potentially do it again. The problem is with that, you look at the last 2 trade deadlines, Julian has traded futures for now, right? Like, he gave up Nolan Foote and 2 first-round draft picks to bring in Goodrow and Coleman. Obviously, it worked out great. He gave up a first-round draft pick last year in the trade to acquire David Savard. Worked out. So I don't think he's shy about doing that again if it means getting the right type of player. But this time around, it can't just be futures for now. You are going to have to move a player off your roster. So, even if you look at, a Matthew Joseph or a Radish or, a Kachuk, these guys are still young, early on in their careers, and they're making $700,000 to $800,000 a year. That's not a lot you can take out to bring something in. So it would have to be, again, creative to make it happen. But I think Julian understands that the opportunity is there. He'll do whatever he feels he can get done to help this team and bolster the lineup.
It is interesting. You make me think about Jimmy Rutherford with all those trades he made, and you keep thinking, well, at some point it's going to get you, right? The team's not going to be as good, and now he's moved on. But Pittsburgh still gets it done, right?
Yeah.
I think you said they've got that core of guys, then they learned how to win, which is the same thing in Tampa now, really.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Again, going back to that conversation I had with the league exec a few weeks ago, he had mentioned that there was a point in time where he didn't think the Lightning were going to be able to get it done. The 3 runs to the conference final and then getting swept at Columbus. And, it was like, maybe they just can't figure it out. Well, now that they figured it out, it's almost like the burden is released, right? Like they were so close for so many years that people were questioning whether they could have done, similar to what was going on with the Washington Capitals. They get to the playoffs, but they can never win. Well, they won, and now everybody's like, okay, they won. Well, this team has won 2 now, and these players have learned what it takes to win in the playoffs, and that's where I go back to that patient approach that they have had. With this core now, they've learned what it takes to win. They understand, you don't have to beat teams 5-0. A 2-1 win in the playoffs looks just as good as a 5-0 win. There's no style points, right? It's just win in advance, and they have certainly learned that.
Well, Eric, we really appreciate having you on. We've run out of time here, but I'm sure as we move closer toward the playoffs, we're going to want to talk to you again. You look at your division there, and you got a lot of 700 winning percentage teams there. Like, it's really impressive. And we talk about a lot of the other divisions in terms of their competition, but I don't think the competition is nothing better than what's happening at the top of the Atlantic.
I have one really important question though. Tom Brady's got some spare time now. I saw he was bringing his kids to the hockey rink. Is he going to now be working with you? Has he called you to see if he can write with you? Or
I'm going to have to get my number to his people, but I'm available and ready to go anytime he wants to give me a call. I'll be more than happy to work with Tom Brady.
He's got spare time now.
Again, Eric, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, guys. Great talk. Yep. Thanks for the time.
That's Eric Edelson of the Lightning Insider, who, as I pointed out before, he knows his stuff. And I really mean that. Like, if he's not reporting it, then it's not true. Yeah. He knows what's going on there. He's covered for a long time. He's on the inside there. He's got a good read on what they do, and his reporting skills are excellent. It's worth checking out his website. And, if you're interested in quality writing and quality writing on a good team, because that team is very good. So you want to check him out.
Florida last night, Kev, was unbelievable offensively. That was the best I've seen a team play offensively, maybe ever. Some of the stuff they were doing was incredible. Shesterkin was making fantastic saves. It was.
Come on now, ever you played against the Edmonton Oilers?
No, I'm serious though. Really, I just because Edmonton, like Gretzky, could come down, do the little turn up, Paul Coffey, the saucer pass over to Yuri Curry, all those kinds of things. But they were just the way they were moving the puck was incredible. Like if Shesterkin has not played as well as he did in the first period, it could have been 5-1. They were that good.
Well, the one thing about today's game is, and a lot of former players, hate it when you discuss this, but the game is played at such a higher tempo now.
Yeah.
It wasn't like in your era there weren't fast players. There were plenty of fast players, but the game now, like we make plays at those speeds. Right. Like before, we just didn't do that. Right. So.
And we were hooking and holding before. They can't do that now. So the pace of the game is totally different.
So and it is, but like we talked about the last time, I'm really sort of glad that we've now brought back sort of the idea that we really need physical play to go with it, because it's a much better game when you're going that fast and you're also playing, physical. So But one of the things that he brought up that I wanted to sort of address is, we were talking about, the Lightning and the Penguins, and about how, Jim Rutherford left and they keep winning. Right. And, Steve Yzerman sort of got that ball rolling in Tampa, and then Brisebois closed the deal. Like, I never diminish, even though Yzerman brought a lot of talent there, I never diminish what Brisebois done, because he's the guy that changed the team at the end. Yes, brought in Goodrow and everything else. But the other thing that we didn't discuss about how there's a comparison there, and they have the older team, but there's also another similarity: Mike Sullivan and John Cooper. Yeah, those are two good coaches who understand, how to utilize veteran talent and make the best of it. Right. And I think that both those guys, play a big role in developing that culture, that winning attitude, because they, playing, now there's always phraseology or terminology that it comes into play, through the years, and we call it, we used to always talk about the neutral zone trap, and and now we're talking about playing the right way.
Yeah.
Now, back then, I'm sure you guys were talking about playing the right way, but you didn't say it like that. Right. So
Yeah.
But here's the thing I wanted to bring up, and this will be controversial for sure. But I've always kind of sensed that. We talk all the time about, well, they figured out how to win. Eddie Belfour was not a playoff goalie until he was.
Yeah. Yep.
Steve Yzerman couldn't win in the postseason. His teams lost to the Oilers all the time. He couldn't get to the next level. Right. He couldn't win.
Ovechkin
until he did.
Yeah. Yep.
Steve. Ovechkin, another great example. Yeah. Here's my question, and I want you to be honest about this. Do they figure it out, or do they just have better luck in that particular series? Like, in Ovechkin's case, there were alterations that we saw in the way he played in the playoffs. But oftentimes, especially in the case of Belfour, he was good before, and then he was good again. But this time they had luck. The team was right, and that God smiled upon them, and they won. Like, sometimes it's not really this dramatic change. They figured it out. It just, the circumstances were right. Like, they were good enough to win. Like, I think Tampa was good enough to win before they did. And now,
no question, talent-wise, when they lost to Columbus,
but
great, yeah.
I mean, the loss to Columbus was different. I think that was a sign that they had lost their confidence and they didn't understand. But
I'm gonna disagree with you there. I don't think they lost their confidence. I think they were overconfident and they didn't go play their game, the game they had to play, the game they ultimately learned to play. So I hear you. Yes, there has to be some luck involved with it, no question. Like, you look at Washington, for example, they went and got Dominic Smith-Pelly, who was a fringe player. He played a big role for them in the playoffs. So they didn't know he was going to do that. There was some luck involved there. But like for Ovechkin, for example, he always played hard and wanted to win. But he just didn't learn that it isn't just Alex Ovechkin going out and making a big hit or a big slap shot and scoring. It's all the little things that go into winning. So that's, to me, when they say, yes, to learn to win, that's important. Like Steve Yzerman, I played against Steve Yzerman when he first started, and he was kind of that soft guy that could pin in the corner. He wasn't going to fight back. Well, that wasn't what he became later on. He was the guy that played with no ligaments in his knees and taking slap shots to the face and all that stuff. So, but it's that learning to say, listen, it isn't about me making a big play. It's all the small little plays that go into winning. So, but you're not wrong in saying that there's a certain amount of luck in it too. But to me, it's learning how to win.
And I'm also bothered when somebody doesn't win the cup and they say, well, he just wasn't a winner. Like if you put Marcel Dion on the 80s Oilers, would they not have won because he was on their team?
I think Mike Gardner, I played against him, was an incredible player. He never won, but he was a fantastic player.
Jeremy Roenick.
Yeah.
Would you want Jeremy Roenick on your team?
Yep.
Because I would. And yet, he didn't win. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, you still be a great player and never win. The teams that win isn't just about that one great player. It's the Mike Bossies, the Brian Trotschys, the Clark Gillies, the Bob Nations. It's a bunch of good players playing different roles. Dennis Bodfin, all those guys. So,
and the other thing too is that sometimes teams get to the final, like last year's Montreal Canadiens. That was a momentum team. Yeah. They weren't a great team.
Yeah,
but they played well in the postseason. They were playing great in the postseason, and they I don't know that they figured anything out. I just think they got going. They played well. They got confident. So.
Carey Price was in that too, right? I mean, that's a big
for sure. So, goaltending makes a big difference. You really need to have that. Now Hudson is walking through here.
Hudson, what's happening?
So but I just often think about that. I always kind of feel sorry for players who get typecast as well. They can't win, or And I really remember the Ed Belfour thing. So I remember I remember just thinking, boy, how hard must it be to have to read all this, that, he can't win in the postseason and all that. And the next thing you know, he's got a cup and he's Hall of Famer.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but you said, well, you can't win in the playoffs until you do win in the playoffs.
Right. No, that's right. Yeah. It is funny how that works. The other thing I love about sports, Colorado, big home streak in a row. Who beats them? Arizona.
I know.
And you know what? Like we all, and I've been guilty of this too. We've kind of poked fun at Arizona. Like, what are they doing? And everything else. But those guys are all pros. They're in the NHL. They could play for other teams. They're just happen to be there. It's not like they have.
Yeah. And I'm sure Colorado maybe didn't play as well as they should have early in the game.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Because if you're not on top of your game, I mean, you really can't get beat in this league. Because the difference between the top and the bottom just isn't that great. So.
Definitely. So what are your grandkids? Can they speak now? Are they old enough to talk?
Oh yeah, they talk.
Oh,
yeah.
They go at it. Okay.
So, yeah, I would say that my grandkids are very good at expressing how they're feeling. So I would say they're just excellent, and I have 5 of them. So
that's right. Yes,
and each of them is very good at expressing how they feel about things. So yeah, and we encourage that in the family.
There's no guessing about how somebody feels.
No, there's no guessing about how they feel about things. So
excellent.
Okay. Absolutely. But let's see how much time we got. Oh, we got just a couple more minutes. But there's a couple other things I wanted to bring up too, because All-Star games coming up, and that's always I don't want to call it controversial, but it's something we always want to pick on a little bit because it's no form of competition at all.
The game itself is no competition.
Yeah, no. In fact, to me, there's actually more competition in the skills contest because I really am somewhat interested in who can shoot the puck the hardest and who's the fastest. I like it that Connor McDavid can fly around there and that Dylan Larkin is interested to see how close he can get to Connor McDavid. That's kind of.
I agree with you. I don't know why we continue to beat that drum about the game being boring. It is going to be boring.
Right.
Hockey's meant to. Players usually hate each other. They want to hurt people out there, right? And not as much today as it was in the past. But they're not going to compete in that game. But I like what they've done. There's more interviews. They've got people on the bench talking to the players. The game itself is almost secondary. It's the personalities that they're getting in the game now, I think. So.
Yeah, and the game is not for Tom Laidlaw and Larry Melnick and Greshner and me watching the game on television. It's for the people that are there in Vegas, especially the kids. There's always a lot of kids in attendance at those All-Star games. The game is for them. Like I've said jokingly that we really should call it the NHL Annual Convention.
Yeah,
because everybody gets together. There's the players get a chance to talk to the media and tell whatever story they have that year. They put them at podiums, and the media kind of travels in little herds around each one, and generally there's kind of a theme. Somebody comes up with an idea, and player gets asked the same question, and then sometimes some players have stories that everybody's been waiting to write to get them things. So. There's a lot of parties. It's a really big event for the cities that host it. And I think that's totally worthwhile. I still would have that. I think it's a celebration of the game. And I think what's wrong with that?
I agree. And the league brings in all their sponsors and everything. So there's a lot more to it than what you see just with the game. I agree with you totally. Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing now. I'm really bothered, and I used to be a national columnist, and I never acted like this. National columns want to pick on the Winter Classic. They want to say, it's run its course. I watch the games now. They're not all that interesting. We've seen, outdoor hockey. They're not getting it. It's for that city. Like, it's such a huge event when they play in those cities. And it really is a big deal. And, hey, has it lost a little bit of luster on television? Probably so. It's not as
it was a big deal at first. It was unique at first, right? It never happened before.
Right. But now it's still big in the cities where it happens. It's a good thing. And I think this could go on for a long time. You could go put it in Aspen, Colorado, and create a rink. You could go to to Alaska and put it on an outdoor rink there.
History
You
after,
can, you can play on Lambeau Field. Wouldn't you like to see a game on the frozen tundra?
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, and it's still a game. It's just like a regular season game. It's outdoors. It's a unique thing.
Right. Central Park. Put it in Central Park. Aspen. Put it in Aspen. Go to Europe. Play in the Swiss Alps in Davos up on the mountainside.
Right. The problem with Central Park could be there's so much pot getting smoked in downtown Manhattan now that everybody gets stoned.
with secondhand smoke.
Oh, God,
anyway, that's my little editorial for the closing out here. But we appreciate everyone for tuning in and joining us. We'll be back again next week to talk hockey. We'll have another guest, probably talking about one of the top teams in the league. If you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com and at HockeyBuzz.com.
If you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Again, that's radio.co at 365 Sports. We'll see everybody next Monday. Have a great weekend.